Would like to call the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, June 11th, 2024 to order at 7 p.m. Could we all stand, face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, I'll apologize for the HVAC. The renovations kind of reduced our capabilities for air conditioning, so if we'll try and manage it with the doors open and the fans. If it becomes too obstructive, then we'll have to close it and go to plan phase 2. So, with that being said, Clerk Berry, would you call the roll?
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott. Here. Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with one change, and that is moving the presentation 5B, the quarterly treasurer's report, to the consent agenda.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by Treasurer Elliott. Clerk Berry, call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. We have one presentation scheduled tonight. Mr. O'Connor, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Steve Siklich with OHM is going to give a brief presentation, and then we'll be available to answer questions.
Thank you, Mitch. Karen, how do I get the slides up? Thank you. I'm just going to update the board on the status of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of this project. So Phase 1 is nearing completion. They have earned about $1 million to date out of a $1.2 million contract. So there's still $200,000 left on that contract, but they are substantially complete. And currently, they're going through some troubleshooting testing on the diesel. So that's where that sits. As soon as more information becomes available, we'll share it. But I expect maybe another 30 or 60 days before that's truly final. And so I know these pictures are kind of small. I was hoping on the big screen you could see them, but just showing the equipment that was replaced. So left side is the existing electric pump and diesel motor, and the right side is the new. So Phase 2, we just started design. It includes all the assets not included in Phase 1. A list of those assets are up on the screen. Generally, it's a diesel engine, 2 pump shafts, electric motor, and then some other miscellaneous work. The schedule is design completion this year, but there's a long lead item with the pump, and you can see it down at the bottom, July 24 through July 25. So about a year to manufacture that pump. We're going to start ordering that next month, I believe. And we'll line up bidding and construction to start when that arrives. So the outlet sewer, the outlets from the station, the original plan was to grout all the joints, but some findings in the field show that there were maybe some other issues that need to be addressed as well. So we included grouting of the outlet sewer, also 150 feet upstream of the pump station on the inlet pipe. And then for the downstream 150 feet out of the pump station, there's a sweep that we are looking at partial lining or replacement. So this one's on the same design schedule, complete this year, bid in December, construct possibly as early as December. But nothing completely new. Well, the new items here are the additional lining and replacement over what was presented to the board last April. And I'll show you why that's necessary. So here are some photos. So the pink line represents the outlet. The green line on the left of the screen represents the inlet. The pink line is what we just did underwater sonar inspection. Again, that's basically roughly a 6 by 10 foot diameter elliptical sewer. On the inlet side, it's the same, but that has never been inspected to this point. So what you can see on the upper left there is an open joint at one of those pipe segments coming around that sweep. And that allows water and soil to move almost freely in and out. Now, this pipe is underwater when the lake levels are high, so it's not always taking on water, but when the pumps operate, there have been issues at the surface. I think there's actually some barricades out there right now still, where that pipe actually exfiltrates water. And so that's something that we didn't really understand the extent of the damage until we did the inspection, and so that's part of the lining replacement that we're planning to address with this next phase. And then on the right, it's kind of tough to see. Again, this is underwater inspection, but there's a little lip there. That's where the two pipe segments meet. There's a little bit of displacement. So, 55 years in the ground, those things do settle. That's kind of what you're seeing. The construction, back in the 70s didn't have premium gasketed joints, which are watertight. So these ones are not necessarily watertight. Same thing, a couple more joints that we found were displaced. And so they're not failures right now, but they are a potential point of future failure. And so this next phase that we want to address those by grouting to make sure they're leak-free. And then on the just summary of costs for these two phases, good news. EPA grant actually on Friday, this past Friday the 7th, finally. I was just talking to Karen and Mitch this morning about that. Finally, after 2 years, they've awarded the township the money. So we applied in January of 2022 and finally got an award on Friday. So $4 million towards this project from the EPA. Now that does bring along with it some other requirements like prevailing wage, which is Davis-Bacon, BABA, which is Buy America, Build America, and AIS, which is American Steel. So those three requirements in themselves do drive up the costs a little bit. And so what we have seen, at least based on the latest estimates, you have basically roughly $4 million for the pump station repairs and roughly $1 million on the outlet sewer. That is probably about 25% higher than what we brought to the board back in, I want to say 2021, 22, before we applied for the grant. So inflation obviously is another big issue that we've had, just getting materials. So those costs are a little bit higher, but again, you did get $4 million towards that. And with that, anything you want to add, Mitch? No? Certainly available to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Item 6, department reports. I'd like to start with Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. If you take a look at the board screen, you'll see that this is the investment report. And if you take a look at the box at the top, you'll see that the 2024 accrued interest as a breakdown between the three funds, that totals over $400,000 in those three. If you remember last couple of months ago, I had told you that we had earned in 2023 accrued interest totaling over $1.6 million in those three funds. So over the last 15 months, the township has earned well over $2 million in the three funds in 15-month time period. If you take a look under the category there where it says Comerica Bank, that $10 million is primarily our public safety fund. It is invested there at Comerica and is earning over 5%, but that will spend down regularly throughout the year. Flagstar Bank, we have had those, one has matured in the public safety. It was only earning 4.7%, so that will be used to pay down on public safety for the next couple of months to pay their bills, and we'll keep the higher earning Comerica investments for them. At Huntington Bank, you'll see that over $26 million is in Huntington Bank. $10 million is in the capital improvement bond T-bills, which is about 20% of that amount, and that is earning over 5%. Go ahead, Karen. In the next report, you'll see that we still have about over 700,000 in our trust and agency fund. Supervisor Kersten and I have begun working with the finance office to do a full accounting of the trust and agency funds to make sure that everything that was supposed to be returned to those people who have placed bonds and everybody who, anything that needed to be moved into the general fund is done properly. There's some questions about things back in the 90s, and so we are looking into that, and I expect some of that to get moved properly. Thank you. Karen, next one, last slide. And then this last slide is going to be on the back of every tax bill. It's a full breakdown of the 2023 tax collection, and it'll show you both the what fund it was going to, the dollar amount that was totally collected over the year, and that percentage. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to, just out of respect for Trustee Vosberg, for your report.
Thank you. Sad to report that longtime resident of Chesterfield Township, Joe Stabile, passed away this morning. Joe had been served the township on the Planning Commission for many, many years, and many of us also know him as former owner of the Voice newspaper and more recently Stahl's Bakery in New Baltimore. Plans have not been made yet, but I'm sure we will be able to find them out soon in the newspaper. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee DeMuynck?
A few comments from Director Vanderson at Parks and Rec. Brandenburg Park Splash Pad is now open for the season, Memorial Day to Labor Day. The splash pad hours are 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., weather permitting. Rentals of indoor and open air facilities are available. Entry fee is $5 per vehicle or season long. Passes can be purchased at the newly entry booth. Also, instructors, if you know someone's interested in hosting a class or teaching or educating the public, please let our staff know. Park and Rec is now planning the next season of programming. Thank you.
Okay, two quick announcements here. The Historical Society on June the 30th, Sunday, 1 to 4 p.m. That's Michigan Log Cabin Day. You'll be able to visit our cabin and activities at our historical village. If you're lucky enough, you may see Mrs. Vosberg knit a bonnet. Give you credit there. Very good member. As far as a public safety meeting, a couple items I'll talk on, and Mr. Joseph will cover the rest. Renovations on our police building are moving right along. The dispatch center will officially open June the 17th at 6 p.m. Right now, there are the building exterior renovations are ongoing. They're drilling and supports that they'll put in there to strengthen the building. Give us many more years of use out of it. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, just one additional indication for the board. And I know it must have been a collaborative supervisor that you put out to the department heads requesting input on needs and wants for remaining ARPA funds. So Director Bassett did kind of give us a rundown on the public safety request for the remaining. There was a request of, in total, just over $100,000 between three expenditures, which were a backup dispatch radio system. There's some renovations that weren't part of the Detective Bureau renovations that weren't part of the overall renovations, and then some additional things that they would like to do in the records office as it relates to renovations. So I'm not sure the procedure for how we select those, but Trustee Anderson and I will be advocating strongly for those requests. They're solid, and they enhance the public safety team. So we'll wait until it's time, but I just wanted the public to be aware that the Public Safety Department has requested these items. Thank you.
Clerk Barron?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As many of you may know, the Clerk's Department has moved down to the senior wing of this building because of our renovations and to have enough room in order to service the public for the upcoming August and November elections. We know there is a lot of activity and a lot of space that's physically needed for those operations, so we will be down there. If you come to the municipal offices and are coming to visit the clerk's office or the election department, your probably best bet is to come in the doors that are at the far south end of the building, and then the department will be there. As soon as we have some security protocols in place, we will be opening up the other door, the senior center door that goes right to their parking lot. You will be also able to access the clerk and elections department from that doorway as well. So there will be 2 ingress and egress opportunities for you once we have all of our security protocols in place to secure all of our equipment and machinery and materials. Secondly, absentee ballots have not arrived yet. For those of you who are looking for your absentee ballot, I know we've had a couple folks call, wanted to know where their absentee ballots were. They are not in our hands yet. The county prints those, and we receive those from the county. So once we receive the ballots from the county, it will then take us approximately 3 to 4 days to process all of those ballots, and then they will be dropped in the mail. We are anticipating that will be at some point toward the end of next week. At least that is our hope and intention. All ballots must be available for the public in our office on the 27th of June. So that is the very last day that they have to get those ballots to us. So as soon as we get them, we'll process them and have them out to you. For those who would like an absentee ballot and are not sure which list you are on, if you are on the permanent ballot list or if you are on the absentee application list, you can call our office and we can give you that information. For those of you who are on the permanent ballot list, you will receive a ballot. You will not receive an application. For those of you who are on the application list, you will continue to receive your application for your absentee ballot, and you do have the opportunity on that application to indicate that you would like to be added to the permanent ballot list. Movement on either one of those lists, we do not place anyone on those lists. If you would like to be on a different list or off the lists, we need to receive that from you in writing, and we will process that request from you. Last and of course not least is that we have some new folks that have joined our team in the elections department. We are almost fully staffed and anticipate finalizing all of the training and proper credentialing that's required for all of them and should be fully staffed by the end of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make mine real quick. From the supervisor, I'd like to announce the formation of a senior advisory committee. This is a direct result of the seniors that came to the meeting last week or 2 weeks ago and expressed some concerns about their location and function. I've engaged Director Vanderson, who will also participate in this senior advisory voluntary committee, and she's going to identify 5 to 7 seniors that will help us steer and guide this committee. The committee will engage the seniors to ensure that they have an open line of communication and clarity between our seniors and the elected offices and elected officials here, along with each of the department heads. Again, this is for open lines of communication, and so they know that they have a voice that will be heard, represented at all levels, and we will know that we will support them with growth and inclusion here in Chesterfield Township. I've asked Trustee Joseph and Trustee DeMuynck to participate in that. They've graciously accepted, and they're going to get to work right away. The Congresswoman Lisa McLean's staff did visit here. We took them to the DeMuynck pump station. We are asking for continued federal funding to help with that continued renovation. We've been successful and will continue to be successful there, and it was a very positive visit. Same goes for State Senator Kevin Hertel, who is here. He is also working with us for continued state funding for the Chesterfield Interceptor, and that is progressing our request is through the state levels today. We've met with MDOT, Macomb County Department of Roads. The Gratiot Rehab Project is underway, as previously mentioned, for 2025. We've engaged SMART also, and we've done this a while ago, but it's slowly coming together. SMART is with us at the table. They're discussing stops, the realignment of stops, and then proper housing for each of the stops. And as the public may be aware, it's not official yet, and I'm not speaking with any official notice other than the GFL Priority Waste, our garbage contract sale appears to be in progress. We have had conversations with GFL. Anything that occurs there and any change will come in front of this board. GFL is still our vendor. They're still operating under the existing contract, so we've relayed to them, and they've promised us that there will be no interruption in services. And I also like to point out we have a great relationship with Priority Waste, and we talk to them on a regular basis. So yes, there is a transition. There's nothing formal to announce. They are in the process. There are some social media posts that have said this and have made public notices, but we are engaged with them at all levels. And just a heads up, time and attendance automated system will be on an agenda item here coming soon for all employees of Chesterfield Township. And the Vets Home Walking Path. We're finalizing an agreement with the Department of Veterans and Military Affairs and the state of Michigan. Once we finalize that, that will also be a board agenda that we'll come to the board seeking approval. With that being said, I will move on to item 7, public comments. Public comments on the agenda items only. There is a 3-minute time limit, and if you would, not required, please state your name just so we can keep track. The mic is open.
Oh, look at that. Really? Okay. I was just going to let Lauren talk a little bit about the other grant, and then when you want to talk about the project itself, we'll. Yeah. Yeah. So, thank you. Very grateful to be here and be working with you on the Monarch Meadows project, and we're very excited that Consumers Energy Foundation provided some additional funding for that, and Lauren Brosh from Consumers is here to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. Hello, good evening. Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. As Chris mentioned, I'm Lauren Brosh. I'm the Community Affairs Manager in Macomb County for Consumers Energy. I'm also here representing the Consumers Energy Foundation, and I am a proud board member of the Six Rivers Land Conservancy. I am excited to announce that Consumers Energy Foundation has provided a grant in the amount of $250,000 to Six Rivers Land Conservancy to support the Monarch Meadows project that's going to protect 64 acres of land right here in Chesterfield Township. Each year, we at the Consumers Energy Foundation provide these signature grants and awards in the form of grants to nonprofits that support people, the planet, and prosperity in Michigan. The grant proposals for these awards are carefully reviewed and voted upon by our board of directors. This year's Planet Award was granted to Six Rivers and was selected for funding because of the project's environmental benefits that will provide improved air quality and water quality here in your community. The Consumers Energy Foundation is dedicated to ensuring our communities have world-class natural resources by funding projects such as the Monarch Meadows and supporting organizations that strengthen environmental stewardship and preserve the natural beauty of Michigan that we all enjoy. We are very proud of this investment, and we are proud of our partnership with Six Rivers, as well as Chesterfield Township, and we look forward to seeing the beautiful natural habitat and the long-term benefits that Monarch Meadows will provide to the township and your community. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Any further public comments?
My name is Joe Kadich. I'm here to comment on the proposed transfer or giving away the area that Consumers Power is giving the money to them to transfer it Basically, this is the second time this has gone around that it was supposed to be transferred over, not transferred over, but first time Selfridge was going to lease the property for $600,000 for however long they wanted it, and it's going to be maintained. That fell through when their first opportunity, or basically they failed to get the F-35 fighter mission. Now it's back again. As you even read in the paper or look on TV, they're trying again to get the F-35s or whatever they can get in there to save that base. This is a crash zone that they want, and everybody should know that. Problem I have is we're getting nothing in return from Selfridge. Now that property, I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, we went through, I believe it was called a brownfield restoration for that area, making sure that there was no content in there that was going to be harmful and it could be developed. We entered into that with the county. So before you give this stuff up, thinking you're going to get something out of it, you better look at whether or not that's developmentable. I figure that based on the rate I pay for my property tax on my half acre, that's probably worth maybe $10, $12 million for that property. And you're going to give it away just so you can have a butterfly flying around there? I suggest you go do your homework on it, see what that property is really worth, whether it is able to develop. And then if Selfridge still wants it, you got Governor Whitmer running around with $100 million saying that she'll do anything to help save Selfridge. If it's worth that much, tell Selfridge to get her to pay it and sell it to them. Be done with it. It just doesn't make any sense to let this property go without doing any investigation as to what it's really worth. Thank you.
Christopher Pierrick, Chesterfield Township. I usually don't spend much time looking at the bill run, but I did see something that was caught my interest this time around. And there's a couple listings for two items. They're separate departments. One is Department 256, one is Department 271. They're for the same vendor, Ultimate Lawn Service, for the same date and the same invoice number, but different dollar amounts on there, and they're for lawn maintenance at the youth center. So I'm just wondering why that would be split up into different departments, if that's an error or if that's the way things are supposed to be, and why. Thank you.
John Speaka, Chesterfield Township. Chris, thanks for covering that. That was one of the items that I had. I had the same question. The invoice 5250 was the same invoice. One was invoiced for $250, the other one was for $500 to the same vendor. So typically in the private sector, you can't invoice two items with two different amounts. So obviously somebody didn't cross-check something and it got missed on the bill run. So I would probably have to say, you know, between finance and the treasurer's department, that should have been picked up, a red flag. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is I noticed that on the agenda item, that item C, on item C, it is, the township is paying $85.21 in dues and to the Michigan Township Association. And just a couple weeks ago, Supervisor Kersten shared an award from the Michigan the MTA, the Michigan Township Association. So are we paying 8521 so the supervisor can get an award in an election year? And I could tell by the response from the board tonight on everybody having comments, you can definitely tell that, you know, this is the election season, and there's definitely campaigning going on. And I'm glad to see that the supervisor has finally taken the seniors in this township seriously. So it's been something that's been lacking for years. So, and then the other thing that I'd like to comment on is I'd like to thank the supervisor. The other day there was something going on at the community center, and one of the seniors asked the supervisor for needing 50 chairs, and the supervisor said you'll have them within the next week. So I'd like to thank him for looking out for the seniors and doing that. And one more item thing that I'd like to talk about is item E on the agenda for tonight, for a purchase of $76,873.72 for public safety to purchase turnout gear. I fully support this, and this is money well spent for public safety, and I'm all for this item, and we need to do more of this for the departments. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Good evening, Janice Young. 10B, the conservation easement. I tried to get as much information on this as I could. I reached out to the board. The only one that contacted me was Trustee Vosberg, so I appreciate that. First, I want to know why there's no public hearing on this piece of township property. As far as I understand, you can't just give away our development rights to this property. I think there needs to be a public hearing on that. And that actually would follow our APO 04-2018, Section 9. Second, this really looks just like a land grab to me by Selfridge. We're going to sell our development rights for $15,000 for 64 acres. Trustee Vosberg indicated there was an appraisal done on this, and that $15,000 represents a percentage of that appraisal. That amount was not provided in the agenda packet that we received. So I think we have the right to know the value of that property before this is actually done. And we all know that Selfridge, they're doing a land grab because they want to put their runway in our backyards. The southern end of the township is, excuse my language, we're going to get crapped on as soon as that happens, and it doesn't seem that anybody on this board actually even cares about that. And I live and work in that end, so it affects me personally. Let's see. In general, conservation easements must provide public benefits, which include water quality, farm and ranch land preservation, scenic views, wildlife habitat, protecting endangered species, outdoor rec, education, and historic preservation. The easement agreement that I read said that we could put solar, wind, and geothermal farms and even 2 billboards on that property. Sounds pretty inviting, doesn't it? There's 2 acres of active use areas in this property, and according to the agreement, it must be low density, provide no playgrounds, and no clubhouses. So again, I'm not sure what we're preserving here. The conservation of this land is all geared around Selfridge having a crash zone. Nothing can be done to enhance wildlife, particularly birds, because of Selfridge. This land conservancy is just a joke. In fact, there are a growing number of instances of these land trusts turning around and selling their easements to the government. It's called a prearranged flip. Is that what's happening here? If not, please show me where it specifically is spelled out in the agreement that we won't be locked into doing that. And if this is not the case, I see it states the easement that it would allow on the solar farms and everything and the billboards. And again, that is ridiculous. So land trusts are nonprofit organizations that actively work to conserve land. It's interesting that a land trust is interested in conserving this piece of land that behooves Selfridge, not Chesterfield, while our planning and zoning department is literally issuing variances and overdeveloping every inch of our township. Maybe the new board coming in later this year can work on getting some land conservation throughout the township. Item 10C, spending $250,000 of our ARPA funds on that pathway. This board, once again, is violating the APO Section 11, APO 11, 2019, Section 3, by not getting bids for this work. Using 2023 prices and last year's lowest bidder on the parking lot, was he promised this additional work? Is that how we got the lowest bid? It needs to be sent out. We need to do the right thing and be fully transparent. Thank you.
Any further comments? Any further comments? Item 8, the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of May 28, 2024. B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. C, approve payment for annual dues to the Michigan Townships Association in the amount of $8,521. D, approve a request by the Department of Public Safety to authorize payment to Macomb County for radio fees for 321 radios for both the police and fire departments in the amount of $26,482.50. E, approve a request by Public Safety to approve the purchase of 6 portable air monitors for the Chesterfield Township Fire Department in the amount of $24,335. And item F, which was moved from the presentation section, to receive and file the treasurer's report.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
Motion by trustee DeMuynck. Is there support?
Support.
Support by treasurer Elliott.
Trustee DeMuynck, would you mind amending your motion to remove item C, the payment of annual dues for the Michigan Townships Association? I'd like to consider that separately.
Sure, I'll amend my motion to remove item C.
Thank you.
Continued support.
There's a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented with the removal of item C, supported by motion by trustee DeMuynck, supported by treasurer Elliott. Did I read that right?
Yes.
Clerk Berry.
Trustee DeMuynck?
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph? Aye. Trustee Vosberg?
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten?
Aye.
Clerk Berry? Aye.
Item 9, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled tonight. Item 10, the regular agenda. We will deal with item C initially, removed from the consent agenda. Clerk Berry.
Item in front of us, item up for consideration is to approve payment for annual dues for the Michigan Townships Association in the amount of $8,521.
Is there a
Move to approve.
Trustee Vosberg. Is there support? Is there any support?
I'll support it.
Trustee DeMuynck. Discussion. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Typically, we've approved this every year, and I've been a supporter every year of the Michigan Townships Association membership. I've benefited tremendously from it over the years, particularly when I was a new board member. However, it's at this time, because the Michigan Townships Association served a couple of purposes. One is to inform us of legislation, also to provide additional support for elected officials from a legislative perspective, to lobby for the township. It's particularly helpful to smaller communities who cannot afford a lobbyist, so their lobbying abilities were very beneficial, and for additional information and training for clerks and treasurers. However, lately, well, not lately, but since we have hired our own lobbyist, who is now lobbying for us, we really don't benefit from the Michigan Townships Association lobbying for us. We have our own lobbyist. They come in and give us regular updates on legislation. They lobby for us in Lansing, specifically for Chesterfield Township. And all of the additional training, most of us that would go to the Michigan Townships Association conferences, I haven't gone for the last several years because my professional association takes care of all of that. The Treasurer Elliott also belongs to a professional association. The planners belong to professional associations. Pretty much anyone who would really utilize some of those things. We all belong to our own professional associations, and we go to those conferences and meetings. So that portion of it seems to be, we just seem to be having a lot of the services that MTA would offer to us covered by other things. So I don't see too much of the value in it anymore. I may be the only voice who has that opinion, but from my perspective, because we pay for all of these other things, all of us pay dues to our professional associations, we pay for our lobbyists, I'm just not sure where MTA helps us out so much. Again, if we were a smaller community, and when we were a smaller community, there was definitely more of a benefit. Even when you go to the conferences, you'll see most of the large communities don't participate, but a lot of the smaller ones do, and it's very beneficial for them. So I just thank you for allowing us to consider this separately. I did not want to vote no on the entire consent agenda, but I will not be supporting that item, and that's the reasons. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Trustee Joseph?
Yeah, I was just wondering, as the motion maker, or I don't know if Ms. Garvey's prepared to speak on what we get out of MTA, is I'd really like to hear that in terms of like specific board benefit. As Clerk Berry mentioned, I think I attended my very first training, just new to being an elected official. You know, that was 12 years ago, and I think you know, outside of those types of things, I'm not sure what we're doing, and I'd just curiously like to hear from Supervisor or whoever on the benefits of MTA. Thank you.
Floor is yours, Karen.
So I'm going to have to disagree with Clerk Berry because we do meet with MTA. We talk with them actually probably every 2 weeks, and they actually work with our lobbyist. So their lobbyist works with our lobbyist, and they've actually worked on behalf of one of our Chesterfield residents. Brad would know better than I how many times, but we have a particular resident that has some problems, and the MTA and our lobbyist have been working on behalf of that resident. So like I said, we've been going back and forth with them probably every 2 weeks recently on different legislation items, and we also meet with them monthly, and they also meet with all of the larger townships as well, just to let us know what's happening in the legislature. So maybe our lobbyist will cover half of it, and then we can meet with everyone else and all the other township supervisors to find out how they're handling it. And they kind of bring us all together so that we know how to respond to different items that are coming up. And it's been very beneficial, actually. And we do attend their conferences, which brings in lots of legal sides of things and gives us some training. So I believe it's very beneficial to be part of MTA. And most of the townships in Michigan are part of Michigan Townships Association. So.
I'll follow up with that. Clerk Berry, I'm not sure where you're getting this from, but MT's been a partner here in Chesterfield Township long before I even sat here. So 2 specific legislations that the MTA is working with us closely on: the Land Division Act, which, as Karen said, started right here in Chesterfield Township with the engagement of Senator Tell and Representative Jay DeBoyer. The MTA is instrumental in that, and that impacts this township greatly. More so than any other township in the state of Michigan, and that's why the MTA has taken that up. Also, the water meter legislation. They're embedded in that conversation, trying to advocate for not just us, but the other surrounding townships. The association also entertains the surrounding communities around us. They're all part of it. Yes, we do meet. We are part of the Big 20 of the MTA, which is the larger portion of it. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. I think there's value here. I think there's continued value here. This is short-sighted if we stop participating with them. Any further questions? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the presentation on what we do get, because as you were talking, Brad, I remembered we actually had some concerns with the most recent census, and MTA, and the concerns were how the state revenue sharing is dispersed. MTA was actually very instrumental in staying engaged with legislators on, a more fair and equitable return I think, you know, in terms of the annual dues, I don't feel like we're a donor community. I think we get more, but I do appreciate the update. Thanks. And, oh, last thing, if you could, I know that Supervisor's office routinely sends emails to the board members on month at a glance types of things. Perhaps, you know, I don't want you to have to record every transaction for the month, but maybe just inclusive of some of these MTA sessions and what specifically, you know, the board could be, you know, on the lookout for. Maybe include that, and I think we would have less problems next year during the annual renewal, whatever that board is.
Thank you. Any further questions? Any further questions? I have a motion by trustee Vosberg, supported by trustee DeMuynck to approve item 10C. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Item 10A.
Item 10A is approval of a special event application for Life Handicap Outdoors 31st Annual Outdoor Fishing Derby held at Brandenburg Park on June 15th, 2024, including the waiving of rental fees totaling $200.
So moved.
Support.
Trustee DeMuynck, supported by Clerk Berry. Director Vanderson, you want to cover this one? This is an annual event, too.
It
We've
is,
done this
yes.
in the
So
past.
this event has been happening for the last 31 years at Brandenburg Park. It's a fishing tournament for adults with special needs as well as children with special needs and their families. Louis Kaloya is the director of the event. He is the leader of the program, and he has done Brandenburg Park very proud in hosting at our site. What this request in front of you, just to be clear, the event itself has rented the pavilion. They are in the standard use of the pavilion. So what your request today is the waiving of the fees that has come along with the special event application in years past as well.
Questions from the board? Clerk Berry. I'm sorry, I have a motion by trustee DeMuynck, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 10A. Clerk Berry.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 10B.
Item 10B is to consider approval of a conservation easement from Chesterfield Township to Six Rivers Land Conservancy and Restoration Plan in connection with approximately 64 acres of land, parcel ID number 1509291760001, also referred to as the North Lagoon property.
Motion to approve.
Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Kersten, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Kersten and trustees. We truly appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're very excited about this project. And I just, you know, want to make, again, I want to make absolutely clear what's happening here. The township will continue to own the property. You're not selling the property or giving it away. You're going to continue to own it. The conservation easement will limit the use of the property to natural resource-based outdoor activities and a few other things that are in that easement that you specifically asked for. The meat of the project, once the property is restricted with the conservation easement, is the restoration plan. And that's what the bulk of the funds are directed to, is to doing restoration on that property to take it from a basically fallow field and turn it into a native prairie and wildflower meadow. And it includes some tree planting. As you know from being involved in the process where we discussed this, there is a concept plan, and that was submitted with funding applications, and the township was involved in developing that. That's a concept plan. Moving forward with the concept is predicated upon, is dependent upon putting the conservation easement in place, and that's because a significant amount of the funding for the project is coming from the Department of Defense, the Air Force, through the REPI, Readiness and Environmental Preservation Initiative of the Air Force. And that pays for doing the improvements. The reason for the conservation easement is to ensure that no incompatible development goes in their accident potential zone. And everybody knows that that is and has been the accident potential zone for many, many years and will always be off the end of the runway. So this easement prevents development that could be in a dangerous zone off the end of the airport. It gives the township some cash for a piece of property that it owns that, you know, by your own reference, the North Lagoons property is basically a brownfield. Has old septic lagoons and a dump on it. We've done environmental assessment work. You guys have participated in that and been privy to it. So this is a chance for us to really make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, if you will, and to take what is what we refer to in our business a gateway property, one with significant visibility coming to the community, and significantly improve and enhance it. And this will, of course, benefit the residents of Chesterfield Township. It will benefit the neighbors right there, and it certainly will help ensure the mission of Selfridge. So we're very grateful to be able to be a part of that and to have a role in doing some restoration and bring some much-needed habitat improvement there. We're very grateful to consumers for their recognition of the value and benefit of this project. We're very grateful to the Air Force, to the Air National Guard for their interest in making this happen and bringing this benefit to their community. So we hope you will act on the conservation easement because that is the linchpin to all of this. None of the rest of it can happen until the conservation easement has been adopted, and that is what authorizes the release of the funds. So we need to get that done, and then we can move forward with the rest of it. And if you have any direct questions, our Land Protection Director, Brian Marzolf, was directly involved in the drafting of the easement, working directly with you guys and with the Air Force. So he is intimately familiar with all of the terms of it. Thank you and good night.
Thank you. Just some background, real quick high-level stuff, and Trustee or Treasurer Elliott, I've been dealing with this from the day that I came in, and this is a win-win as I see across the board for the township. This parcel does include a little over 20 acres of a decommissioned landfill. It is a lagoon. We've struggled maintaining it as a township. There is overgrown by Phragmites. When we did host an event out there, an informative piece, the mosquitoes and it's an unusable piece of, you can't walk. The mosquitoes are almost as big as flies. And we have this difficulty of the township maintaining this. I think what this this conservancy is going to allow us to do is, with the assistance of Six Rivers, expand our walkability, expand foot traffic use of it, everything that's been enumerated and listed in the agreement, and give us, guarantee a green space for the residents, who I've spoke with several of, are in support of this, a green space that will forever be here and be managed. And on the flip side, yes, it helps Selfridge. It helps Selfridge maintain a mission, and that is a positive for this township and this county. So with that being said, Treasurer Elliott, I know you wanted to chime in.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Yes, it is all the things that you have said. I have talked to residents recently. I have a lot of friends who live over there, and they're telling me that it's getting, the Phragmites are taking over very bad. They're getting, and they're basically, if you look up on Phragmites, there isn't a lot of wildlife that can get through are those called reeds? Is that what they are? Yeah, that can get through those reeds, except for, as my friend who lives over there says, it's getting taken over by mice. And she's like, and the mice are coming in the backyard and things like that. And so the Phragmites are getting too big for them to cut, to go back there and cut. It is there's quite a bit of water back there now. And I think you referenced, that is referenced in the packet, the stormwater management piece, and why that's important to keep it cleared, to keep the Phragmites out there, out of that area. Can you talk a little bit about what Phragmites do? Because I think not only is that important to this piece, but also to our environment here in Chesterfield.
Sure, I'm happy to. In a different part of our relationship, both with the township and in the region, Six Rivers is the the lead partner and the fiduciary for the Cooperative Invasive Species Management Area, which, for the Lake St. Clair group, which works in Macomb and St. Clair counties. And one of the big invasive species challenges that we face is Phragmites, which is an invasive reed that has no native competitor and just explodes when it takes hold. And you know, lots and lots and lots of you have seen it all up and down the sides of the road, all along the shores of Lake St. Clair, in retention ponds, in drainage ditches. So one of the big things we do is work with communities to try and manage the Phragmites that's in drainage ditches to improve and increase and enhance drainage flow. On a property like this, on a project like this, where we're actually moving forward with a restoration, we will shift from just trying to manage the Phragmites to actually trying to eradicate them on the property, replacing them with native species which do support other plant life, other animal life, and help help put things back in balance. So a lot of what you're referring to, a lot of what Supervisor Kersten was referring to, is a result of the property being out of balance because there's a lot of invasive species impact to it.
I also have a question. It was very important to me in our discussions about the tree canopy, right, and planting a lot of trees. What types of trees, do you have any idea, will be planted on that? Because there's some misunderstanding that we can't plant any trees over there, and can you clear that up?
I can speak a little bit to it. I won't speak, I will not speak authoritatively technically to it because I have people that do that, and that ain't me. So I don't want to lie. But we are going to plant trees that have some, first of all, the location is the most important part. And secondly, their height and their influence on the accident potential zone, right? So we can't reforest the entire property with 250-foot tall trees. That's not going to happen. We will plant species that are that don't grow as big as a giant 300-year-old oak tree, and more of the attention will be given to screening from the highway. But all of those details will be worked out in specificity once we move from a draft restoration plan to actually doing a formal restoration plan, and that will happen. We'll put time and energy and resources into that once we have the conservation easement in place and know that it can go forward. So we would expect that the township will participate in developing that final plan.
And then the REPI program, I don't know if you can speak to the REPI program. That is something that's offered nationally, is that correct? That's not just specific? Yeah, please.
So I'm Ken Baker. I'm the State Environmental Officer at Selfridge. So the Readiness Environmental Protection Integration Program, REPI program, is a conservation program for all installations to work with the community for compatible development and natural resource conservation. So it's a way to partner with the community so we can get a win-win. And I'm sorry if I don't know if I answered your question, but it's a national program.
So it's a national program, and it's not only focused on, what are the two focuses?
Well, natural resource conservation, where it can assist the mission, is such in this situation because of potential incompatible development. We can partner to do conservation and protect the mission from incompatible development in APZ2. And Chris was right, APZ2 has been APZ2 since 1950, and it's always going to be APZ2. It's not going to change. So there's no change with respect to that property and what it's designated as.
Right, it's designated as the APZ2,
Yeah,
which is the crash zone. We all know that. And everybody, so that is one of the difficulties for anybody who were to look at it. Not only do they have it, it's formerly a lagoon property, but it's also, so you're having to build something and build homes in a place where you have the white pipes coming out of the ground, and you have airplanes that could crash there. So that's probably why we haven't had developers, I'm assuming, looking at that at all, because it is problematic. All right. And also just wanted to ask Karen, I believe you received some letters from residents over there?
Yep, sorry. We did receive 3 letters in favor of the project from Lisa Munn, George Worthman, and Dan and Susan Brown.
Thank you. Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, neighborhood kids, can they set up, depending on the season, football games, soccer games, baseball games on that property?
Sure. Nothing will prevent them from doing activities on that property in the future that they do at this point in time. It's not going to be manicured like a football field. It's not going to be manicured like a organized sports field like you have in other places in the township. It's going to be managed as a meadow in a natural area. So the plant life will be 2 to 3 feet high. There will be lots of native wildflowers and native grasses and things like that, but certainly kids will be able to access it and do whatever kids do.
That won't affect anything as far as a crash box, or that's not an issue, right?
No, in the discussions with the Air Force, their issue is that what they don't want there is a stadium with 10,000 people. What they don't want there is a subdivision, you know, with 1,500 homes. They don't want things that are going to draw large crowds. So as long as it is natural resource-based recreation that is limited attendance and limited use, that's not problematic.
Your last statement, 20 or less kids, that's expendable, you know, if the plane comes down. Thank you.
Well,
Disregard
yeah,
that.
I wouldn't. I'm not sure I'd put the number at 20, but.
Thank you. Trustee Vosberg. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I support this project it's been talked about here for a number of years. As the supervisor said, even before he came on board as the supervisor. And originally, when it was originally proposed, it seemed like there was going to be a large amount of money that would come with it. But all along was always said, but it's contingent upon being properly appraised, which it has been. So I support this project because I think it's a valuable piece of property in terms of township asset of what we have, and it's a way to preserve some of our green space for our residents and not have continued dense growth with housing. I have a couple of questions. Can Six Rivers, so as I understand it, we continue to own the property. We just give Six Rivers an easement, conservation easement, which restricts and/or allows for those types of conservation projects to be there. And what does it? Can you sell that easement?
I don't think anything precludes us from selling the easement other than the marketplace. I'm not sure who would buy it or why. The easement can't be overturned. It can't be extinguished.
That was what I was going to lead to the next thing. Perhaps if Six Rivers is no longer in existence or something like that, another conservation easement could take it over, organization. In fact, that happened in Macomb County backed by the Public Works Office. There was an easement developed, and then not the company, but the conservation organization changed, and I believe now, Six Rivers has that?
Well, sure. There was a Macomb Land Conservancy which consolidated with the Oakland Land Conservancy several years ago, which is what created Six Rivers. And by several, I mean more than a dozen, because I've been there for 13 years now, and it's been Six Rivers. So there was a consolidation at that time, and there are some other things that happened. So the Nicholson Nature Center, which you may be familiar with, is actually, the property is owned by Macomb County. It is owned by Macomb County Public Works. Six Rivers holds a conservation easement on it. That was part of the requirement of the land donation, was to ensure that the county never changed their mind and said, oh, just kidding, we're going to sell this to be developed. So we hold a conservation easement which ensures that it will stay natural. Macomb County Public Works isn't situated to be a park system or to manage a natural area parkland, so they have an arrangement with I'm standing in Chesterfield Township. Who am I thinking of? The other one.
Clinton Township.
That one. Thank you. With Clinton Township, that manages the Nicholson Nature Center. So those types of interactions on the surface tend to take place. There are provisions that if Six Rivers were to go away, some other appropriate entity would step in and take over the conservation easement.
Trustee Vosberg, Attorney Siebert looked over this and briefed with that question in mind. I'll defer to Chris Anderson.
The easement agreement itself provides that if Six Rivers is no longer viable, it can only be transferred to another qualified organization under the International Revenue Code. It further provides that the only way the easement can be terminated is by a court order or by eminent domain.
Thank you. Further questions? I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you, because I was leading to that, but you explained it much better. And can this, so based on that this is a conservation easement, can that property ever be turned into a runway extension?
Well, that's a loaded question. Under the conservation easement, no. But as your counsel just explained, the government has the power of eminent domain. So the government could come in and say, we're taking this, we're extinguishing the easement, we're putting in a runway. And although we will put up a good fight with any other opponent, the government has tanks and airplanes, so we'll probably let them have the day.
Right, but that, and just to, my last thing, to our council, that could happen to the township if the township continued owning it, correct?
Absolutely.
Right.
Eminent domain can happen to anybody.
Right, okay, thank you very much, that's all I have.
Thank you. Questions? Clerk Berry.
Just a question, and maybe legal counsel will be the one to answer this question, but if I'm not mistaken, even if the government comes in and takes by eminent domain, they can't take it and not pay you for it. They have to pay you a fair market value for it. Isn't that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
That's right. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm really happy that Six Rivers is going to eradicate the Phragmites over there for Treasurer Elliott's friend. I didn't realize there were mice that were part of that contingent, but it was good to hear that there's a plan there. I'm against this. Chris, I've had some conversations with you a few years ago. I didn't particularly like the board meeting where we adopted Monarch Meadow Day and then see a presentation from Six Rivers naming the project the Chesterfield Monarch Meadow. So it led me to believe that a lot of work had been done way before our elected officials saw it, at least some of us, and certainly the residents. In terms of the residents who spoke, one, the APO requirement for the sale or lease of property is not applicable here because this is not, as I understand it, a sale or a lease. This is a conservation easement. So we're not violating the APO. In addition to question regarding the I don't know if you were asking if kids could have soccer leagues there or a soccer field or a ball field at some point. The answer is no. In terms of the trees, we're not interested in 300-foot oaks, but the agreement states clearly that no tree above 80 feet will be permitted. As you said, this was APZ2 forever. The water potentially, I imagine, poses a problem. The lagoons prior to their drainage, and there would be no opportunity to use that in any way for our stormwater management. Obviously, any water collecting there is problematic for the base. I could go for days. The resident that got up and said there's nobody on this board standing up for the residents is really unfair. I was very outspoken at every opportunity I had, whether it was at Metro when the initial compatibility study and the committees met, and my argument then is the same now. As the township, as Chesterfield Township continues to, anybody that moved in here, unless you're over 100, knew that you were moving next to a military base. So there's no complaints from me or really any other resident about the impact of living next to a base, but the operation, as we've come to understand, is very, very interested in expanding. The perimeter of the base will extend. The base operation will extend. And the runway compatibility for aircraft like the F-35 requires additional runway space in order to bring that aircraft here for any kind of mission. I know that they're not going to Harrison Township to expand the runway south. They're much more heavily developed on the south end of the base perimeter. But what happens to this to the north end of the base, which I believe will be someday very, very soon, the Chesterfield, south end of Chesterfield will just be an extension of the base. The APZs that have been in place since the base has been there, Mr. Baker, don't restrict, don't eliminate the potential for development. There are, of course, size and scope and light pollution or interference, and so there's deference always given to the base mission, but certainly the restrictions are no longer debatable in the commission of this transference of conveyance of this easement. Lastly, I'll say there's 29 pages of legal who does what, and at any point the belief that the township, the owner of the property, is not upholding our part of the easement, relief sought through court would encumber the township on both parties. That we enter into an agreement that says if we don't execute that easement, that the relief granted through court we'll be paying for our attorneys and your attorneys. This is, when it initially came forward, hundreds of thousands of dollars being initially contemplated for compensation, which was more of a, I understood that. I still think that the property stays green. It continues in its passive way. I understand that the letters, and Ms. Garby read Mr. Worthman, who posted a very comprehensive and articulate position on why he thinks the township should go forward with that. I respect him and anybody else that feels that way. What I don't like is not being able to have a debate and a discussion about what this really represents. All due respect to the conservation people here, this is an extension of the base. This was brought on by the base, and to not have deep, meaningful conversations about the quality of life for the residents on the south end of the township, and to replace that with, at every turn, that somehow anybody that advocates for a Chesterfield resident is somehow traitorous to their own country, and that the sound of freedom trumps all. I don't think that the guy that sat down there, Mr. LaFata, who expressed a number of these issues over the course of his, deserved to be called a traitor for being outspoken on this. And that is the pattern that seems to continue. But I suspect there's been a lot of work done to make sure that the votes are here. I think they've been here for really a couple of years. I don't know what happened to the hundreds of thousands of dollars that was coming. I see 15,000, and I appreciate Consumers Energy and the grant. I just don't know why, and we had this conversation a few years ago, what precludes the township from reaching out for grants. Certainly, conservancy agencies aren't the only entities that might qualify from grants. Cabela's, our partner on the south end of the township, spends a lot of money on conservancy, and I think there were multiple agencies and organizations and funding streams to retain our property and not enter into a third-party agreement for $15,000 and the promise of REMI and Consumer Energy and all these things. We can get those on our own and be somewhat more capable of controlling our own destiny as it relates to those 64 acres. So I'm deeply against this, have been, And I would like any resident watching or that watches this to know that I am not voting against my country. I am not voting in favor of Al-Qaeda or any other entity that, foreign and domestic, that challenges this nation's national security. But this is another piece of Chesterfield South becoming Selfridge North, and it impacts our ability to generate revenue. And so I'm against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Trustee Anderson?
I think I've asked all my questions. Just have a few words here. To our guests from Consumer Energy, the foundation, I apologize. I'm really grateful. On behalf, I think I can speak for the people, my fellow board members. I am really grateful for the kind donation. I apologize to you. I wonder if those that approached you regarding this really told you that there might be other voices, might be other concerns than just having a butterfly thing, which is good, A little history here. This is kind of like, and I know tonight will be the end deal. I know the votes are here. This has been going on, and this is really no reflect on Six Rivers or what I look at as what we're talking about tonight. This all started about 3 years ago. And Selfridge, for over 100 years, has been a tremendously popular entity for all the communities that surround it. We are grateful. We appreciate it. It's enhancing our security. We have all branches of government, soon to be Homeland Security, assigned there. It's definitely something we can sleep at night. But a short history. The past several years, a majority of the Macomb County cities, villages, and townships entered into a coalition with a vision primarily focused on the base's survivability. Federal, state, and many local officials championed that cause. You probably heard different names. Also heralded was the millions and millions of dollars that come to Macomb County and the various government entities within it. However, it is virtually non-existent to how any of these monies come to Chesterfield Township. For myself, with the exception of the time I was on active duty or when I lived in Detroit due to residency requirements and employment, I have spent my entire life within 4 miles of Selfridge. I've always appreciated, quote, the sound of freedom, end of quote. Then there are those that utter it so often that it's about the same impact as to the casual observer as the old sentiment, close cover before striking. That's for you, baby boomers. The North Lagoons, Monarch Meadows, whatever you want to call it. I look at this different. Mr. Supervisor, if you and your predictable majority choose to place these 64 acres into a conservancy, you will effectively deny any and all future township boards or like entities, I know they were discussed here, any involvement with this property into perpetuity. It's also my understanding that any adverse physical conditions affecting this property will probably still be the township's and not Six Rivers' responsibility. The one letter that we received was talking about this was there may be some toxic issues. I know it was capped with clay years ago. It is probably not a valuable piece of property. It probably should remain fallow, whatever it is. And Mr. Supervisor, have you not engaged in negotiations with the powers involved to gaining a meaningful, fair market value for this property? After all, the governor has pledged $100 million for improvements to Selfridge. Coming full circle, our township may be the most physically impacted community in the county without receiving any financial benefits. And the argument about a crash box growing up around here, wherever a plane comes down is a crash box. As a kid, I remember one C-119 bouncing over the spillway at Harper and Wellington Crescent. Thankfully, the crew walked away. That was a crash box. So they're going to happen, and that has been a flight plan right along. I just don't support the way this is being held tonight. And I believe that our residents should have had a town hall for these input of what's going on here before this happens. And with that, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Any further comments, questions? Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you. One more question for you. Would you have an access trail back there, cut through there at all, where I think in here that you have a picture of a gravel parking lot? Is there going to be any sort of lower cut area where you can walk?
Yeah, so it's a little tough to tell at this distance from the picture, but that again is the concept plan that we put together with you guys. And so the blue area there shows where the parking lot would be, and then you can kind of tell that around the outside is a red line that shows the bike and walking path. And at this stage, that's simply intended to be around the perimeter of the property. But, you know, again, once we know that the easement is approved and that the funding to actually do the project will be released, then we would engage with the township to flesh this out and turn this into. So there is intended to be biking and walking paths right now. The extent of those will be determined further down the road.
And how much maintenance have you done here in Chesterfield over the last few years? Do you know how many times would you estimate? And I know you don't, I'm kind of throwing you. You've been here and done maintenance. You guys have done maintenance on properties here.
Yeah, we've done, so by the way, Supervisor Kersten, I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at the trust fund meeting, where I will be testifying on behalf of your acquisition application that is in front of the trust fund board coming up. Yeah, excited to see you there. And excited that I'm sure we'll get this project. That Salt River Nature Center, you may recall, we helped you acquire. So we've done stewardship work out there numerous times. I couldn't tell you how many. My stewardship director has organized what we call stew days, field days out there. So it's been managing invasive species. It's been some cleanup on the property. Similarly, through the SISMA, we have been doing Phragmites management along road rights of way and in some of the retention ponds on some of the private facilities in Chesterfield Township where folks have asked us to come in and do that. And I know we've done some other projects, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what they are.
So that's the type of management that you'll be doing on this property. Not only will you be clearing the Phragmites and then planting some trees, planting some lower growing type wildflowers and whatnot. You'll be also going out there on a regular basis yearly to do maintenance?
Yeah, so the initial plan for the restoration is a 5-year plan, just to get it stabilized and reestablished as native meadow and the other things that are going in there. So we will be actively involved in all of that through the course of those 5 years. On the natural resources side, what's going to happen with the trails and the public access will be up to the township. That will be the piece that you guys will take care of. And then, you know, after those 5 years, and that typically is the 5-year monitoring window for restoration projects like this. Once you've gotten things firmly established, then you reevaluate the level and amount of work that is required going forward to maintain it.
And when did you have a meeting? You had a meeting out at that property, correct? We had a meeting. When was that?
Yeah, oh gosh, was it September? Last September, yeah.
How many letters do you think it was that you guys sent out to the residents? You sent residents, was it like 400 or 500?
Over 300.
300 letters. So to the residents there, you met with the residents
Yes.
there, and you spoke, and there was a good turnout. There was maybe
Mm-hmm.
40 or 50 people I had come. And you took them and you took and answered questions. You walked through the property with them. Right. So for me, this is a win-win. I understand that there are some concerns about whether or not the Selfridge piece, Selfridge Air Force Base is going to change their runway, and I think that's a separate discussion from this piece, in my opinion. And this is good because I think there's a lot of development going on in the community. This is a piece that developers have found is problematic development. So this is a way to restore that into something that is usable. If we can put a trail through there where people can walk, because right now the Phragmites are making it so they can't even walk back there where they used to be able to walk. With the rains, it has created a lot of water is kind of piling there, which is like a breeding ground for Phragmites, if I'm understanding that correctly. So this is a win-win, not only for Selfridge, but for the residents. It's not going to be developed anytime soon. This is our ability to have you guys manage that property and take care of it and preserve it for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer or Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just wanted to take this opportunity just to state my reasons for my upcoming vote on this item instead of taking up some other time in another item area. So I'm struggling to find. My husband and I have had a military family, been military for many, many years, not anymore. My husband's a disabled veteran, always supported Selfridge, support the mission there. I supported the F-35 mission, I still do. I'd love to see it remain an active and vibrant part of our community for a long time. However, I respect my fellow board members and their opinions. I just want to give mine. I will not be supporting this item. I don't think it makes any sense to give away 64 acres. I don't know any community growing like Chesterfield that gives away 64 acres of property and puts in a permanent solution to a temporary problem. There's no guarantee that future administrations at the federal level are going to keep Selfridge even open. I know we've had to fight for it all the time. What happens when they decide, someone much, much higher up the food chain than us, decides that they're going to change that, close Selfridge, and now we've got a piece of property that helped them out at the time, but now we can't do anything with it. Furthermore, if they do want it, I'm fully in support of giving them the opportunity to buy it from us. I'm fully in support of giving them the opportunity to exercise eminent domain and pay us fair market value for it. But I don't see the benefit in giving up that valuable bargaining position to another entity. I don't know why we would shortchange our residents that way. That's just the way I see it. I'm not saying that my other fellow board members who have a different point of view think that way. It's just the way I see it. I would like to support it, and I would support it if there was adequate compensation to our residents. And I think it also really limits us in the future. Chesterfield is still very much a growing area, and I think it really limits our options later on. And I don't understand why we would handcuff future boards or handcuff future residents with what their abilities and options were for this particular piece. It's right off of I-94. I think we have lots of, and I've been told many times, we have lots of park space. We have a hard time managing it. I can understand that we may have a hard time managing this piece, but I don't think we would have a hard time finding a buyer for it, particularly the federal government, if it's that critical to their mission. And I think that's only fair to our residents so that we can then take those resources that we are now not going to be able to realize in any other way in the future and take those resources and use them to benefit our residents. To me, it seems like we're giving away a very a valuable bargaining chip that our residents can use to secure other things. And I just, I'm uncomfortable with doing that at this time. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph? Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I was just really going to be quiet on this, and then when the treasurer talks about a meeting with the residents, and these questions are really getting rough for me, you know, will you expand the run? Could that be a runway? Well, how could that be a runway? Anyway, the problem that I have with the meeting in September, and I don't fault the residents that live near this proposed conservation easement, and I don't know, Trustee DeMuynck, check me if I'm wrong, but I don't recall any time a development was going in next to a wooded area where the residents came to a planning meeting and said, boy, I think this is the greatest thing ever. Typically, residents that abut a green space, regardless of what that green space may be, will come forward and say, I don't want any development of any kind. You know, they like the green space. So I understand why 300 letters to the surrounding community and a meeting of 50 people where the Conservancy gets to speak on behalf of the township. You know, this is why it's a good deal for you. I would have liked to have been there because I would have liked to ask, you know, back and forth, what precludes us from doing this? What keeps us from doing that? Why couldn't it stay green? Why couldn't we go for a grant and put in a pathway? Why couldn't we plant, what's the plant? The pussy willow plant for the monarchs. Why couldn't we do that? Of course that we can, and I think Clerk Berry is 1,000% right. We are surrendering our rights to this property, and we own all of the bad pieces. We get to own the property, so we're not being compensated for it, and we're going to maintain it in accordance with what Six Rivers or any other conservancy that takes over this contract. And the idea like, oh, time out, don't consider any of the selfridge because that's a separate transaction. No, it's not a separate transaction. It's a continuation play. You work very closely. You're here tonight with Mr. Baker, who I've seen for years here talking about the base needs, and I respect his position, and I respect every entity that comes from Selfridge to challenge our development, and they are advocates for their mission, which is to make sure that the base operations are not impacted. But the township should also have a voice in the meetings and be able to talk about what's in the best interest of the township. And I'm not talking about the perimeter as it currently exists. I'm talking about the perimeter, as we all know, is expanding. And we are probably not in a position to do much about whatever it is that the base operations want to do. We know that. And when the concept of eminent domain came in, I think, as you rightly said, they have tanks and aircraft, and we will not be in a position to do much should that be imposed. But in the interim, why would we encumber this land when we're clearly doing it in part because of our cooperative nature with the base, and we don't have any assurances that, one, the base is there in perpetuity, so why would the agreement be there in perpetuity? And I don't see anything of value for the township residents that we couldn't secure on our own, despite, you know, and I know the AC's off, so I don't want to add more hot air here, but like I'm about one more, you know, will this eradicate mice, and will this, you know, I realize what's going on. And I think the residents do too, and I believe that there are some people that see this as a real conservation. I won't lose sleep over it because I do agree with the idea that we are developing very quickly, and the idea of having some green space preserved is a nice concept. How we do it, I don't particularly agree with, but I think it's a good idea. But I don't know how much more of the debate that we'll get. One entity says it's never going to be developed because there's just all kinds of problems environmentally and the wetlands and all of that. And then the other is we have to protect it from development before it becomes houses. Which is it? It's pretty dormant property, has been as long as I've been here, and I think it'll remain that way naturally without us giving away our rights to that 64 acres, or better yet, giving away the residents' rights and future boards' rights to that property. I like this is a short-term fix, but the problem is going to be with us for quite a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Any further comments or questions? I have a motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve 10B. Clerk Berry.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Nope.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Item 10C. Thank you, gentlemen. See you at 5:30 tomorrow.
Thank you very much. I'll see you tomorrow.
Item 10C is to approve a request from Public Services to spend $250,000 for the rehabilitation and HMA capping of the Civic Center pathway.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion approved. Support.
Motion by trustee Joseph, supported by treasurer Elliott. Mr. O'Connor, you want to cover this?
Good evening. This request is to rehabilitate the Civic Center pathway. A brief description of the work is to reset and lower the cross culverts of the pathway, to do the base repair of the pathway, and then to put a 2-inch cap on it.
And this pathway is behind the building here?
Yes.
You looked like I stunned you.
Well, I'm a little punchy, I think. But yeah, it's around the building, it comes around the building, it goes all across the property.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I support this, Mr. Supervisor. One, I think this is a good ARPA project in that it benefits, the residents who actually deserve it. There is a lot of traffic on those paths. They become a problem as soon as we start to have a little water, and then as we get late into the fall and we get those icy conditions, we have sort of ponding that takes place, and then a little ice. Path is black. We have people out there in. I think this is a good use of the ARPA monies, and provides a direct benefit to the residents. I also was happy to hear because it's not commonly found, but the adherence to the 2023 unit pricing was really quite fortunate. I think with the costs associated with every kind of construction going up, to get them to honor the bid that was, nearing its end was good. So this is a good use, and I think you don't need to spend any time at the township to know that this is a heavily utilized path by all walks of residents. So thank you.
Just so I can clarify, you're good with the ARPA fund usage on this? Because we put it either way.
No, I'd like to just declare it. I don't know that it was part of the motion, but I think it is an excellent use. I know it was maybe being considered. I'd like to make it part of the motion and ask for continued support.
Continued support.
Thank you. Trustee DeMuynck.
I'm full agreement of this. The path, like Trustee Joseph said, it's a lot of people just, whenever you're here, see people out there even later in the evenings, even walking their dogs. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm in full approval of using ARPA funds for it. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Looking at the path in the agenda, the green marks, that appears to be the same pathway that we currently have out there. Are there any plans to add to it or remove parts of what we have there? And then right now, one of the problems is there's a lot of pooling of water when it rains. Has that been dealt with in these plans, that it will be either like a center crown, or I don't know what you call it, to make it water slide off from there instead of pooling on it?
To answer the first part, there is no expansion of the existing pathway. It's to rehabilitate the current one. And this project will lift the pathway 2 inches, and the cap will have like a transverse grade to get the water to move off it. And it does include, it's basically, in between the pathway is open ditches that cross the pathway and culverts and make their way to the drain. We're going to lower each one of those cross culverts to improve the drainage, the overall drainage of the area.
Great, so that, to try to eliminate even some of the sitting water in the grassy areas?
Yeah, this project won't do that, but it will lower the culverts, so we could come back and re-ditch them to get that water moving better in the grassy areas.
Right, okay, thank you.
Treasurer Elliott. Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I'll support this because of the need of our residents and where the finances are coming from, the ARPA funds. The question I have is, and this came up with this trail before you were here even. I believe it was AEW designed it years ago. And what I would like to see our consultants and engineers do, instead of dumping it on you and our staff members, when they design these projects for the township to be installed, they know the material. when you put an asphalt driveway in, your own, believe within a year you should seal it, if not sooner. And you should have a regular schedule to continue sealing it to extend the life of it. This is a case where maybe it was needed. I understand there was problems with it dipping down and all that to start with. I would like to see our engineering firms, they know the material. When they come up with these, I look here, there's about 8 lines here, and it ends up nearly $250,000. Well, it's Whiskers money, not the township's. I'd like to see something added to. They know what is a maintenance should be. How often should it be sealed? If it involves paint or finishings, what should be done in X number of years? Supply that with what we have here. You and your team will know what has, instead of, we have a park over Brandenburg went in like in 2013, designed in that. I don't think it's ever been sealed. Now, I don't know. I think it would have last better shape, like the original one, if there was some kind of maintenance, regular maintenance, and maybe the engineering or the consulting firm should provide that to our township. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Berry.
Thank you. Mitch, what is the expected life on this project? Because one of the first things that I had to vote on when I first got elected back in, I think it was either 2012 or 2013, I had to vote on it, was some funds to pay for repairs to this. And then I think it was 5 years later, we were paying for repairs to this. And former Supervisor Accavetti, who obviously was, kind of like this engineering savant, I asked him about it, and he said, you're always going to have problems out there because of the water, because of the material, and so on and so forth. And Trustee Anderson touched on it, and he had a good point with the, maintenance. This is a pretty good chunk of money that we're going to be investing here. Are we going to see in another 4 or 5 years the board's going to have to vote for another $250,000, or are there some issues that you're going to be remedying, I guess? So what's the expected life on this, and how can we be assured that in 4 years, 5 years, we're not going to be, looking at another $250,000 expenditure just to maintain
it? Great question. When we redid the parking lots, we reconstructed the parking lots. This soil here is not stable material, it's clay. It kind of moves a lot. So, that's a big reason why the parking lot failed. And it's probably a big reason why the pathway, I don't know when it was built. You say 2013, so it's 10 years old, and it looks older than that. But Trustee Anderson is right. Once we're going to rehab the failures, build them back up, and then cap the entire project. Within 4 or 5 years, there should be some regularly scheduled maintenance, seal coat or something to that effect, which is somewhat inexpensive, but especially for asphalt pavement, it really does extend the life of it. So to answer your question, this project will get us to probably 5 years, and then we probably would come back for something to extend the life of the paving. And I would expect it to be much less than this cost.
Thanks. That was my next question, is what you thought the anticipated costs were. Thank you.
Just a quick comment. There is a maintenance schedule for the asphalt parking lots here in the township. This pathway was on it. It was just failing in just certain areas that it needed to be addressed in a deeper dive. So that's what this request is, to fix those areas that need it greatly and then improve it also. And it is within the capital plan for all of our parking lots.
Fred?
Further question, Trustee DeMuynck.
Real quick, it's just, you never know what's going to happen with asphalt. I can attest to even the bike path along Metro Parkway that's been there for years. They've had to recap that a couple times. And it's just people walking. It's not traffic where you're getting vehicles and the weight of vehicles and stuff like that. Even that one's been recapped a couple of times. I've seen that construction go on. It's just the soil and land. Harrison Township and along Clinton, same thing here in Chesterfield, just soil conditions, even for people walking, just the movement, the frost, the heaving, just like our roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Further questions? I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 10C. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 10D.
Item 10D is a request by Public Services to authorize engineering design services to Spalding to Decker for the Salt River Drive paving special assessment project in the amount of $19,360.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Trustee Vosberg, second by Treasurer Elliott, or I will.
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Mr. O'Connor?
This is a special paving special assessment project. We closed public hearing number 1 at the last meeting in May. This is the next step, is to prepare bidding documents. The project has to publicly be bid and the bids read aloud. And Spalding, this fee is to produce those bid documents.
Questions from the board? Trustee DeMuynck.
Real quick, Mitch, how long before you think Spalding will get this and then it'll go out for bid?
The intent is to build it this year. We're trying to coordinate with the gas company, which I think is Semco. We want them to go in there before we go in there. And it just seems to happen every year. Even with these paving projects last year, we always seem to get up against it. So we could probably open bids in August, but the SAD process requires 2 more board meetings. You got to schedule another public hearing. You got to have another public hearing. Again, the intent is to pave it this year, but it would probably be in October, early November if it got paved this year.
You don't want to do it that late in the year, because you know what's going to happen. And last I was speaking with someone from SEMCOG, they told me they're only doing from Meldrum to the Arch, unless you've heard something different, that they're not going from the Arch to Point Lakeview with the gas line. That's what one of the guys told me, unless you heard something else.
No.
They said there's only, it's a difference, that's where the steel line only goes from Meldrum to the Arch. And so at least a lot of.
And that was their original plan. When we told them we were paving, they said, well, we'd like to get out there and do our gas replacement before you pave.
Okay, all right.
Because they replace the gas line, they directionally drill it, but then they have to pothole every connection.
Right.
And if that's in the pavement, it
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just one quick question, Mitch. The engineering fees are part of the special assessment district costs, so the approval is just really the township board acting as the steward for the project. The cost doesn't come out of the general fund. In essence, it's part of the SAD, correct?
that is entirely correct.
Thank you.
Further questions from the board? A motion by Trustee Vosberg, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 10D. Clerk Barry.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 10E.
Item 10E is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to purchase turnout gear from Municipal Emergency Services in the amount of $76,873.72 for all full-time firefighters using grant money that we have applied for through the Michigan Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. The purchase will initially need to be made, but we will be reimbursed once the grant has been approved.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee DeMuynck, supported by Trustee Anderson. Director Bassett.
So this is a request to approve the acceptance of a grant in the amount of $76,873.72. The Michigan Professional Firefighters Union lobbied the state of Michigan to fund turnout gear for all full-time firefighters throughout the state. The Department of Public Safety applied for and has been awarded the $76,873.72 for turnout gear for 22 full-time firefighters as the gear expires from years 2024 through 2027. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Just for the public knowledge, we issue 2 sets of gear to the firefighters. Their life cycle is about 10 years. We try to replace them on a rotating basis. This is a reoccurring cost that public safety's always had, and the state obviously stepped forward and recognized that public safety needed to address this, not only with equipment, but also with staffing in one of the areas. So I think this is a good thing. Clerk Barry.
Thank you. Director Bassett, what happens with the old turnout gear?
So we actually return it to the manufacturer if they have a use for it, but unfortunately, if there are other agencies that want them, we can donate them, but we aren't able to use them anymore.
Just a quick follow-up to that. Once it hits the 10-year mark, can any department use them? I mean, they're effectively done at that point, no? There couldn't be a use like in other municipalities where somebody might take an outdated truck or something that's beyond the turnout gear is no longer safe after 10 years. The manufacturer dictates that.
So for Chesterfield, that is 100% true. What other agencies do and how much life they get out of them, I'll be blunt, that varies throughout the state.
Oh.
But the manufacturer says 10 years, we absolutely abide by that.
Great, thank you.
Brad?
Trustee DeMuynck.
Real quick, I've seen where sometimes they donate it to PDs, to the fire arson units, and then those guys wear it when they go dig a fire. I've seen that happen, but not for firefighting purposes. I've seen that go to some of the PDs.
Thank you. Any further questions? A motion by Trustee DeMuynck, supported by Trustee Anderson, to approve item 10E. Clerk Berry.
Trustee DeMuynck.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson. Aye. Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott. Aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 11, addendums, there are none. Item 12, public comments, a 3-minute time limit. If you would, please state your name for the record. Not required, but again, just where we can keep track. The mic is open.
My name is Della Hall, and I live in the subdivision, Stonehenge subdivision. I'm here tonight to discuss the sidewalk replacement program that was done last year in Stonehenge. I'm asking the one slab that Luigi's put in be replaced. I have been disputing this since the day Luigi's did the work. The work they did is unacceptable. When they came out, the form had water in it. They poured the cement, roughed it in. Along comes the next worker, and he's looking up at the sky, going back and forth with a finishing tool. Never once looked down at what he was doing. I approached him and asked if someone was coming to finish the slab. He just walked away. The slab was not finished properly. There was no line separating slabs. They just brushed it straight across onto the next slab. I made many calls to DPW and Luigi's. Luigi's came out, used a shovel to break a space to create a line between the slabs of cement. You cannot fix cement once it is dried. There is now a broken raised lip on the edge of the slab. This raised lip is worse than the slab that they removed. I was told not to worry because they won't come back and take it for another 5 years. Luigi's replaced one sprinkler head, but the other they couldn't replace because they didn't have it on the truck. I have been working on this since August. I have been writing and sending pictures to the sidewalk email. I have been calling DPW. I started walking in the DPW building. I'm told I'm on the punch list. I'm off the punch list. I'm back on the punch list. You hear nothing, so periodically I would go to DPW and ask for a status. I asked what steps I could take next because I feel like I'm going in circles and not making any progress. It was suggested I appear before the board and state my case. The workmanship is bad, the product, the formula to make the cement seems low quality, and I feel it is not going to last. This slab does not meet the construction standards for sidewalk construction that was in the official notice. The slab was not finished or smoothed out. The top has irregularities. There is a chip in the center of the sidewalk the size of a nickel. The line of separation they created with a shovel has created a jagged, broken, raised lip. and pieces of cement are still crumbling from this lip. This raised lip is bigger than what was on the original slab that they replaced.
Thank you, ma'am. Time's up. Can you give Karen your address? We'll look into it for you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Christopher Pierik, Embassy Street. I've been coming here for just over a year. One of the reasons I started coming was to be more informed, and I learn things when I hear questions asked and questions answered. It's still tough to get consistent answers for questions and comments from this when you're here at the meetings. So last meeting I did suggest that we extend the time for the board to answer questions. And a few members up there did take some extra time. I appreciate that. I think it was great. I don't think anybody in the audience complained about that. So I think that was great. I'd like to see some back and forth dialogue if we could get to that point one day. Tonight, Trustee Anderson on one of the agenda items said, "Now it's up. The votes are here." So last meeting, Clerk Berry, she talked about an agenda item that was withdrawn, and she also stated that we know how each other votes beforehand. So that means that to me that the presenter, their input and the residents' input from this podium have no value because the votes are already set. It's already decided what's going to happen up there. So I'm just disappointed in that, and I hope that's not the case, but I think it is. I think I'm smart enough to know that everybody knows what they're going to do before they go up there. So I'm just going to leave with this. What we hear affects what we know. What we know influences what we believe, and what we believe impacts what we do. Thank you.
Good evening, Janice Young. I'd like to bring up the Spalding DeDecker invoice again. It was never addressed at the May 28th meeting when I mentioned it. It was for the Stonehenge detention pond. And after the last meeting, Supervisor Kersten, I stopped you and asked you what it was for. And you said it was for them to do the bidding process on the detention pond. And I looked back through all the meetings, because you and Ms. Garvey both said that it was approved at in an April meeting. I can't find it in anything. Spalding's letter from the meeting doesn't have anything in there about them doing the bidding, there being an additional charge for that. So is that part of the $27,000, their 10%? Is it coming out of that 10%? Because I don't think you actually have the right to spend our money, my money, and the residents of Stonehenge. It's a special assessment, so that pond is being paid for by all the residents. So I just want to know, what the outcome is on that, and why it wasn't brought to this board for approval, since it's clearly over the $5,000 limit. On the grass cutting in the township, there was an article in the Voice newspaper recently about how bad the ticks have gotten in the area, which I've done some cleanup on Donner, and I brought some home with me. I also did a community garden here at Kensington Church and brought a tick home with me. And the article said that they live in tall grassy areas where along human and animal trails. The sidewalks at 23 and 94, the grass was knee-high. I'm like, so I wonder if there's ticks actually living in there. It looked really terrible. And then they cut it, and now it's just full of dead grass laying there. So it really looks pretty shabby. Ms. Garvey did talk to me about it before the meeting, but I just wanted to mention it on the record. Supervisor Kersten, you giving a voice to the seniors, thank you for doing that. I think they appreciate that. Now, how do the rest of us get our voice back? On May 29th, Kevin Hustick emailed this entire board and asked for one of you to put the agenda item out there to amend the APO to get it back to where it was. And none of you did it, not one. And he also went on to say that if you did not do that, that if the residents would take that to mean that you were a unanimous decision to restrict our voices at this podium. So that's really unfortunate. So I guess the seniors will just have to trust you that you will actually follow through and give them their voice, even though they won't have the voice, even though we won't give the voice back to the rest of us. The only way for the residents to truly get their voices back is to vote this board out on August 6th. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Move on to item 14, closed session.
Chesterfield Township, John Spica. Good evening, Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica. I'm a fiscal conservative hawk running for treasurer on the August 6th ballot. I bring this up because the August 6th primary will determine who your next treasurer, supervisor, and clerk will be. We're 56 days away from firing the current treasurer, supervisor, and other board members you feel have wasted your hard-earned tax money and put this township in debt for the next 20 years. Treasurer Elliott, Supervisor Kersten, Trustee Vosberg, and Trustee DeMuynck all voted to silence every resident in this township to 3 minutes on all agenda items. These 4 individuals took our freedom of speech away from speaking on any agenda item after there was discussion on that item. That was their response, telling all residents that they don't care what any of us have to say or what our concerns are. These 4 individuals also went on to approve a sewer line costing $8.5 million plus interest for the wealthy and well-connected on the north end of the township. Builders and developers pay for their own sewer lines, not residents. It would take over 300 years for us to collect back our money on tap fees. All 4 individuals also voted to take over a sewer line from the county that needed $11 million in repairs and pass the repair costs to the residents of Chesterfield Township by increasing their water and sewer rates. The line was also being shared by neighboring communities. To make matters worse, they even voted to buy Sugar Bush Elementary, which Supervisor Kersten calls the new senior center and community center for the residents. The 4 board members also approved $2.8 million of ARPA money for a 50-year-old dilapidated building needing $10 to $13 million in future repairs. In my opinion, Chesterfield deserves better. We could have built a new community center for our residents and our seniors and spent the money wisely. All 4 members, in my opinion, should be held accountable for their dereliction of duty, and that was reflected tonight by all 4 of them and fired on August 6th. This is just the tip of the iceberg. If the residents only knew the other shenanigans going on. There should be, I'd like to ask Supervisor Kersten, he's been sitting in that seat for over 3 years now. Supervisor Kersten, just out of curiosity, just a quick question. Why have you not bought a house or a condo to where you actually pay property taxes on a house and condo in this township? You don't pay a water bill. You have absolutely no skin in this game, and you're up there every 2 weeks wasting the taxpayers' money. And then I'd like to ask the 4 Musketeers, did they get their market value for the North Lagoons? Did the residents get our market value for?
Time's up. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Christina Ross. I just wanted to make sure that I heard Clerk Barry right. Did you say that you and your department are operating voting here at the municipality for August and the November elections? If that's so, it's my understanding that the township will still have construction ongoing, which surprises me that you'd be able to operate in such a minimized space since you pushed through without authorization from anchor-based schools the early voting at Sugar Bush Elementary. You stated to me that you didn't have the space here at the municipality, so you pushed through operating early voting at Sugar Bush Elementary. So I just wanted clarification that did all of this time you have the space here to operate early voting? Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments from the public?
Mike Martin, 50393 Power. I hope everyone had a good time at the air show over the past weekend. I know it was pretty loud and incorporated a lot of interesting sights over the township, especially some low flying going on, but it was definitely a fun time for a lot of people who were able to see it, both on and off base. Other than that, again, very interesting night tonight. I don't know if anybody noticed, but there was a scout in the audience tonight. They left early, but I was hoping people noticed that, yes, sometimes children are present in these meetings, and I think you should all be on your best behavior when that is to set a good example. Aside from that, as it is campaign season, and I am very questionable about how many candidates we actually have. I think going off of what I saw on the county roster, I think we actually have the most for trustees of any community in the entire county for a primary contest. That's a lot of candidates, including everybody on the board still going up for an election. One thing I will stress to everyone, please take note of with your signs and your campaign lit. It does become litter. One thing I do not tolerate in this community, and I stress that I do not tolerate it, is littering. You know how much trash I have to clean up, even at your newly financed community center? It gets trashed all the time. The other night I found 4 alcohol bottles in the parking lot where kids are playing. I think you should know that. This is not something that you just, oh, well, we have it now, so we don't have to take care of anything. No, you have to maintain it now. It's your property now. It's the township's property. Start maintaining it. I'm not going to be here forever to clean everything up after you guys. I do so out of my own voluntary volition. There are some people, someone in the audience, who will do such things. But if a government is going to own things as assets, if it is going to maintain it for the public trust, it has to ensure that it is properly maintained in such a manner. You can't just simply own things and then let it go to rot. That's what's been going on in this country for decades. And look at what we have as a result. Crumbling roads, crumbling buildings, infrastructure issues all around. This is because of poor planning and inability to commit to what that government, at whatever level it is, has decided to overtake. If it can't afford something, then it has to sell it off. But if it decides to obtain it, it must maintain it in its entirety. Thank you.
Any further comments? Any further comments? I'll bring it up to the board. Board comments, I'll start with Trustee Anderson.
Well, the one thing, Mr. Ward, I want to thank you, whether those of you here or not know it. I'll tool around the neighborhood at times, and I know he doesn't see it. He's walking his dog. He's got a bag. He's picking up everybody's trash. And I know he doesn't see me. And I'd like to thank you, and that's a continuous thing. He does have pride in his community. We've got several emails. Why is an agenda item placed on a night going back to the old 3 minutes after each agenda item placed back on the, for the public to talk? I'll make a couple comments on that. I believe that we should, not for our residents to get up and maybe get off task as to what we're discussing, but we have a lot of expertise in this community. And when agenda is prepared, there may be individuals in our community that have more knowledge, more input. And we have an opportunity to get educated besides what we see printed. have the language. I will not put it on until after the election if I'm here. I don't want that to sound political. I'm not going to put it on here at this time for the reason I know there's not support for it. I believe it would be an exercise in futility. That's why I haven't done it. And finally, Mr. Pierik, I might be clairvoyant. There goes my 3 minutes, huh? Well, let me fit. An old former township official told me that quite often nothing goes on the agenda unless the votes are there for it. Just quoting that late gentleman. Thank you, sir.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I'll pick up where Trustee Anderson left off. The APO was introduced back in 2018. There were a number of revisions. Perhaps Trustee Vosburg, if she's inclined, can speak on this. This was her initiative way back when. It was defeated in whole or in part on 4 occasions, each one looking to erode the ability for the residents and the board members to speak. It continued, and in August of last year, there was a successful 4th vote to alter the APO to eliminate public comments during regular agenda items and minimize and reduce time for board members and residents to speak. I received the same email. A month before the email, Trustee Anderson reached out to Attorney Siebert to explore language in a thought of perhaps bringing it forward. But to get an email that says, if you don't, then we will infer that you're all against it, is not intellectually honest, and it's really not even fair. When you got into the race, you seem to have interest in agenda items, but twice tonight and several times before, you talk about this clean house and the whole board. And it's really, it's intellectually dishonest, and you probably should keep in mind, and I won't lecture or give anybody advice, but this is a race for trustee. You came into it hopefully with genuine and integrity, and you want to leave the race no matter how it goes. And presenting intellectually dishonest positions for board members who have been very clear, and it just takes a little bit of research, because after that board meeting, and you can go back and watch any of them and hear my comments and Mr. Anderson's comments. Caitlin Maurice did a story after the board meeting. There's clearly an ever-reaching attempt to censor our residents and to censor unfavorable opinions wherever they may come from, whether it's the board or the public, Joseph said. It's censorship, pure and simple. To have years of work eradicated because a resident says, if you don't do this, then I will tell everyone and I will infer that you're against it. Again, intellectually dishonest, it's beneath you, and you shouldn't do that kind of thing. The other issue is the Senior Advisory Committee. I appreciate you, Mr. Supervisor. We had vehement disagreement about a number of issues tonight, but the issue involving seniors was something that you were very anxious that we had a very nice conversation, and my recommendation to you was either Trustee DeMuynck or myself have been on the Parks and Rec Commission for almost 20 years, and we have a close relationship with our Parks and Rec people. There was a divide when it became leisure services, and the seniors perhaps felt that there was no longer a senior center and a Parks and Rec. After the last board meeting, and watching and listening to some of the seniors that were in attendance, I thought it would be a nice opportunity to have a more direct access to the board. The things that were being said during the board meeting and after, where seniors had just complete misinformation, going back to a February vote on CDBG monies, and this idea that they were being forced out because the supervisor had this with the... There's clearly politics, and the seniors are not immune from that. To have a Citizens Advisory Committee allows the seniors, and then we will report back. Trustee DeMuynck and I will report back. We will hold an informational meeting within the next 2 weeks after talking to Ms. Vanderson about what date and time works to capture the most seniors. Ideally, My vision, Mr. Supervisor, and I agree with Trustee Anderson, whether I'm on the board or I'm not, we worked very closely together for the Friends of Chesterfield Police nonprofit, and I see an opportunity perhaps to bring that to the seniors. There are a number of agencies and businesses and quite wealthy people who are interested and contacted me after. I can do something with the flooring there, temporary, and creating a senior citizen advisory committee is a great opportunity to get some of these ideas back to the board. So I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate Trustee DeMuynck. We haven't seen eye to eye over the years, but this is something I think we're both invested in, and I'm happy to work with you on.
Trustee DeMuynck.
It also, when this idea came up, I heard Supervisor Trustee Joseph reached out to me, and I reached right back out to him. Says, yep, I'm in. So we spoke to Supervisor, so we're going to set up our schedules between his and mine, and Director Vanderson, and meet with a few of the seniors and get their ideas, and then we can relay it back to the board. I'm glad we approved the walking path and back. It needed it. My vote on the lagoon property, whatever you want to call it. The landfill's been there forever. The lagoon property's been there since the 60s, because I remember they were built. I was just a little tyke back then. But I'm fine with the green space. I have people all the time telling me, you know, we're building up too much in certain areas, especially in the northwest and northeast. I had some farmers approach me. So we're keeping some green space. That's my reason for my vote on that. I think Selfridge did a great job on the air show. It was great seeing all the great fighter jets coming in and buzzing around. And I wish everybody a good night. There's one thing I will not do from up this podium. I will not politic. That's for outside. I'm here to conduct business with this township. So you're not going to hear no political ways from me up here. I'm going to vote on my items. I'm not going to politic from up here. So let's just put that right out there now. Thank you.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The Boy Scout that was here earlier, his name is Isaac Jarosz. He's a Life Scout, and he's also someone who has volunteered to do some work at the historic village. He's going to stain and recaulk the log cabins. It's a big project, and we're happy to have him here. And him being here tonight was just part of some of the badge work that they do, and which includes to attend a public meeting and take notes on the meeting. So I appreciate him being here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm very proud of my record here at the township, and I was very happy to make a positive report about how much interest we've earned over the last year, less than a year and a half. And it's nice to see some positives and hear positives, and to say those kinds of things. I'm proud of this township. You won't often hear me putting down my home, because this is my home. And that's not, I did have somebody who once said to me, who was from another country, and said that that was very odd when they came here to this country, and heard how many times the people in this will put down the place where they live. They'll criticize it, and they'll look for problems. And I try to tell people positive things, and I'm proud of our community. And I'm not scared to say Sound of Freedom. I have not served in the military. My father has, and he is buried in a memorial. And I live in the flight path. I'm in the APZ-1, and we have taken, my kids run out, they take pictures, they know all of the sounds of the planes, and I have no problem with that. I did understand when I moved here. I'm sorry that some people don't feel that way. I do understand that they moved to a township where there is an airport in our backyard. There's something Mr. Pierik has brought up is there's questions about the Treasury and Finance, and there is one person in the audience who continually confuses Treasury and Finance. Treasury and Finance are not, they are the checks and balance. Finance reports to the clerk, and Treasury is independent. So if there is an issue with the Finance Department, or if you have a question for the Finance Department, that does not report, the Finance Department does not report to Treasury. They do report to the clerk. Now, with that being said, I am very confident that any kind of invoice that comes through has been allocated appropriately. The item that you asked about was for $750. $250 were billed to facilities and operations, and $500 was billed to the Youth Activity Center. Oftentimes, there are reasons for that. I'm not specifically sure what this reason is for that. I'll send you an email tomorrow after I ask the finance director, okay? And so we had talked about, do you know how you vote before you come? Well, most of us have done our research. That's our job, is we do the research. The agenda goes out beforehand, and we do our research, and we do our homework. And I think that is important. A lot of times when you come up, you have questions after you do your research, and you also do hear the residents' comments. And maybe that does change your mind here at the board. Ticks along the sidewalks were also mentioned, and as we talk about that pathway in the back. So some of the things is that water back there and the phragmites are growing, and that does create an environment that breeds ticks. That is part of the reason that I talked about for our green space and why I very much support the green space conservation. I also support the pathways in the back because there have been networking groups that have been walking back there, and I've walked with some of them, and it's very dangerous back there. That is the most used path where people are walking their dogs and taking their kids for bike rides. Thank you.
Clerk Berry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciate Treasurer Elliott making that distinction. A lot of folks are unaware that the accounting department actually is a record-keeping function, and they report to the clerk. So I will say the other piece of finance, which is the budgeting piece and all of that, they report to the supervisor. So there's a couple of different folks that report to him, but she's absolutely correct. The accounting department does report to the clerk, and if anyone has any questions about anything regarding the bill run or anything in the accounting area, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll sit down and talk about that. Also, I don't typically answer questions from the board, but it actually dovetails into something I was going to talk about, and that was early voting. Early voting is still taking place at the community center. The Chesterfield Election Commission made that decision that that's where our early voting would take place. Early voting will still take place at the community center for August and November. We do have 9 days of early voting for each one of those elections. We are conducting early voting in the section and area of that building that Chesterfield Township leases. So we do not use any of the Anchor-based schools area. We do all of that in the area in which we lease and have a right to be in. We do expect, though, that by the time the August early voting occurs, that we will in fact own the entire property. So we don't foresee any issues or concerns. We do not have adequate space here, especially with the renovations. It is my hope that in the future that we will be able to have all of those activities take place on this campus with the new renovations that are being done. There are certain considerations being made for that. The individuals who are here when I refer to the clerk's office and the elections department, those are the folks that are our staff members doing the pre-election activities that we have to do, our everyday operations. So our operations center is here. There are almost 20 people working that. It's an enormously huge task, and they take up quite a bit of a footprint. Supervisor Kersten has been kind enough, and our facilities director, Josh Sonnenberg, has been fantastic in modifying, and we have had to significantly modify that space in order for us to work there, but we are getting there, and we hope to have our public service counter in place here within the next week or so. Obviously, a couple of other events and activities in the township have taken resources away from getting that done, but we will be able to completely service the public. You will be able to receive an absentee ballot, return an absentee ballot, vote your absentee ballot if you choose to, at the location here at the township, but there is no other voting precinct here. There is no early voting here, and there is no election day voting here. Our four voting locations now are Green Elementary, Sugar Bush Elementary, or the Community Center, Great Oaks, and Higgins Elementary. Thank you.
Made most of my comments under the department reports, just a few things. Mr. Perrick, I will answer your question. I think the treasurer already did. That is, the invoices are charged by department. Ms. Young, the invoice to maintain and run the retention pond in your subdivision is the township's responsibility. and we will do it. I would suggest that you come in and get the proper documents that reflect exactly that. And we'll continue to do that to all of the detention ponds that are throughout the township. Just want to make sure that everyone's clear on this issue. We do not own the school as of yet. Our closing date is not until the end of July, and the school will set that date. We're still in our due diligence period. We're still doing research on it, but the closing date has not been set. That is their building. We are simply a tenant there, and it will be handled as such until the closing date and the papers are signed. And again, tomorrow, as already mentioned, a contingent of township employees are traveling to Jackson to meet with the DNR Trust Fund, trying to seek funding for other green spaces within this township. There are several of them. All of them need to be addressed, and we will continue to do that. But the point I am making is this is set up, number one, not only by our contract lobbyists, but with the assistance of MTA, who, again, we meet with regularly and engage them regularly and seek their advice. So it's just another element of the daily practices here. With that being said, I'll end my comments. I will make a motion to adjourn
Support.
at 9:25. Motion to adjourn by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.